Right now, your body is running approximately 37 trillion cells simultaneously, keeping your heart beating around 100,000 times a day, your brain firing electrical signals at speeds up to 268 miles per hour, and an immune system fighting off invisible threats every second without you ever noticing. It's an extraordinary, coordinated biological machine. And at some point, for every single person who has ever lived, that machine stops. So what actually happens next? Not philosophically, not spiritually, but biologically, mechanically, step by step. The answer is stranger, more gradual, and more fascinating than most people realize, because death isn't a single moment. It's a process, and your body keeps doing remarkable things for hours, days, and even years after it happens. Let's start with the first few minutes, because this is where the science gets genuinely surprising. When your heart stops, you don't instantly lose all brain activity. Research using EEG monitoring on dying patients has detected organized brain wave activity continuing for up to 30 seconds after the heart stops, and in some documented cases, brief surges of activity resembling patterns seen during dreaming or recall. Scientists studying this phenomenon in both animal models and human case studies have proposed that this final burst of neural activity might explain why so many people who are resuscitated after cardiac arrest report vivid, dreamlike experiences, memories, or a sense of reviewing their life. Your brain, even in its final active moments, appears to still be doing something. But once that activity fades, the cellular process of dying truly begins, and it's driven by something surprisingly simple. Your cells need constant oxygen, and without a heartbeat, that oxygen delivery stops immediately. Different parts of your body have wildly different timelines for how long they can survive this. Your brain, which uses roughly 20% of your body's total oxygen despite being only about 2% of your body weight, starts experiencing irreversible cell death within about 4 to 6 minutes without oxygen. Your heart muscle can survive somewhat longer. Skin cells, remarkably, can survive for up to 24 hours after death, which is part of why organ and tissue donation timelines vary so dramatically depending on which part of the body is being used. Within minutes to hours after death, a process called liver mortis begins. Once your heart stops pumping, blood stops circulating and instead starts settling downward due to gravity, pooling in whichever parts of the body are lowest. This creates a purplish-red discoloration in those areas that forensic investigators actually use to help determine how long someone has been dead and whether the body has been moved after death, since the pooling pattern reveals the body's original position. At around the same time, something called rigor mortis begins. Your body starts losing heat. A living human body maintains a temperature around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit through constant, active metabolic effort. Once that effort stops, your body simply equalizes with the surrounding environment, typically cooling at a rate of roughly 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit per hour under average conditions, though this varies significantly based on body size, clothing, and ambient temperature. This is another detail forensic science relies on heavily to estimate time of death. Then comes rigor mortis, and this is one of the more counterintuitive parts of the process. Your muscles don't relax after death, they stiffen. This happens because your muscle cells require a constant supply of ADP, a molecule your body uses for energy, to allow muscle fibers to release and relax. Without that ongoing energy supply, the microscopic filaments inside muscle tissue essentially lock into place. Rigor mortis typically begins within 2 to 6 hours after death, peaks at around 12 hours, and then, in a detail most people don't expect, it actually resolves on its own after roughly 24 to 84 hours, as the muscle tissue itself begins to break down. Which brings us to decomposition, the process most people associate with death, and it's genuinely more complex and more biologically active than most people imagine. Your own body's digestive enzymes, the very same ones that broke down your food while you were alive, begin breaking down your internal tissues once cellular function stops controlling them. This process, called autolysis, is essentially your body starting to digest itself from the inside out. Simultaneously, something remarkable happens with your gut bacteria. Throughout your life, your digestive system houses trillions of bacteria that exist in careful balance with your immune system, kept in check and confined to your gut. The moment your immune system stops functioning, that balance collapses entirely. These bacteria don't die with you. They begin spreading throughout your body, consuming tissue as they go, and this process is actually one of the primary drivers of decomposition, alongside environmental bacteria and insects that arrive from the outside world. This is also where the science gets genuinely useful in unexpected ways. Forensic entomologists, scientists who study insects, can determine fairly precise time of death windows by analyzing exactly which insect species have colonized a body and at what life stage their eggs or larvae currently are, because different insects arrive at extremely predictable intervals after death, creating what's essentially a biological clock that continues ticking long after the person has died. Decomposition proceeds through several recognized stages: fresh, bloat, active decay, advanced decay, and finally, what's called the dry or skeletal stage. During the bloat stage specifically, gases produced by all this bacterial activity cause the body to swell significantly, sometimes dramatically. This is genuinely one of the more overlooked aspects of decomposition, but it's a critical, predictable part of the process that scientists studying decomposition timelines rely on heavily. Depending on environmental conditions, temperature, humidity, whether the body is buried, exposed, or submerged in water, the entire decomposition process can take anywhere from a matter of weeks to potentially many years. In extremely dry or cold conditions, bodies can become naturally mummified, essentially preserved by the absence of the moisture and warmth that bacteria and insects need to break tissue down. In highly acidic, low-oxygen environments like certain peat bogs, bodies have been found remarkably preserved after literally thousands of years, skin, hair, and even facial expressions still identifiable to researchers studying them today. Eventually, given enough time, what remains is skeletal material, and even bone doesn't last forever, though it lasts significantly longer than soft tissue, sometimes for thousands of years under the right conditions, before it too gradually breaks down through chemical and environmental processes. So what does all of this actually tell us? It reveals that death, at least from a strictly biological standpoint, isn't a switch that flips instantly. It's a cascading, predictable series of processes, some ending within minutes, some taking years, all governed by the same basic biological and chemical rules that governed your body while you were alive. Your cells don't understand the concept of death. They simply respond to the presence or absence of oxygen, energy, and the immune regulation that kept everything in careful balance while you were breathing. There's something genuinely fascinating in recognizing that even after the person is gone, the body itself remains, for a while, an active site of biological process, chemical reaction, and even, through forensic science, a kind of information source that can tell a detailed, evidence-based story about exactly what happened and when. So the next time you think about what happens after death, it's worth remembering that biologically speaking, very little about your body actually stops all at once. Instead, it transitions, piece by piece, system by system, following rules written into every living cell you'll ever have, playing out one final, remarkably intricate process long after the question of being alive has already been answered.